I knew the value of that.
Yeah.
And then I could see what our sales team was doing.
Yeah.
And we had a cultural problem and we had a sales problem. Through getting the right people, getting the right training with the right mentality, has really been another one of our keys to getting that thing turned around.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. In today's episode, I sit down with just a great guy, longtime client, longtime friend, Brock Faulkner. And Brock is the CEO of a medical technology company and has been a client of ours for probably 12 years, give or take, at this point. And a couple things that are good to know about the business is Brock actually started in service management. I mean, this is a guy who was in this organization and is now the CEO of the organization for the Americas and also has international responsibility. So you look at somebody who's really progressed in their career, and we'll talk about those things, the mindsets that he had to get promoted and how he managed to climb the rungs, if you will, to become the CEO of the company where he was an employee and a manager at one time. Lots of great things. Really look for the mindset of Brock. I think he's got some great thinking in terms of how you can progress your career and go on to do even better, greater, bigger things. Let's jump in. Brock, welcome to our show. So glad to have you. Thanks for coming on Building Your Sales Engine playbook here. We got looking forward to some time together. We've known each other for forever, haven't we?
We have.
It seems like. How long have we known each other?
About 12, 13 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? And we got introduced way back when through, might have been our friend Janelle, might have been
Daryl Stromberg.
Daryl Stromberg. Indeed.
Yep.
What a good guy. He's coming up on the podcast too, by the
Is
way. Yeah. What a great guy.
Yep.
You hang around with good people.
Yep. Thank you.
Indeed. Brock, why don't you share with me and for everybody a little bit about your background, what you do. You're the CEO of Dornier MedTech America and now have more international responsibilities. But tell everybody a little bit about what you've done, where you've been, a little bit of history and background.
So I started at Dornier when I was very young, 21 years old. I like to tell people I didn't start at the bottom, but I could see it from where I was at. And been very fortunate in my career to have a lot of different opportunities and rise up through the organization. Came up through technical side first, service and service management, and then took over the distribution channel in Latin America. And then in 2014 became CEO of Dornier MedTech America. And really, my job today is, produce the results as, required of every CEO, but really also to help plan what our future is. Because, I've got to have one eye on, hitting the numbers this month, this quarter, but also working 3 to 4 years ahead. Because in the medical industry, if you're not working 3 or 4 years ahead, you're not going to be there. Because it takes, if you start something today, it's going to take you 3 to 4 years to get it to market. So it's an interesting job from that perspective.
A lot of people struggle, it seems like, with me. They struggle with doing the longer term stuff and the day-to-day stuff. That's something that I think I run into a lot with people, is that they have a plan for the day maybe, but they're not thinking longer term of what they've got going on. And you guys have done a phenomenal job at that. And that's something I know I want to learn from you today. And that is some of the things that you've done as far as putting longer term plans together. So whether somebody's managing a sales team or whether they're managing their own life, you guys have done some really cool things about implementing longer term planning. Anything you want to share about that, or best practices or thoughts around that? We could jump into that.
Well, we have a very collaborative culture. And the success that we've had is because we've hired really good people, created a culture and environment to where they feel free to share their thoughts and really work hard to get the best ideas from the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so really the journey started back I became CEO in September 2014. And then in August of 2015, we had a meeting, and you were part of it, in
Remember it well.
in Lake Oconee at Reynolds Plantation, and we put together a 5-year plan. And we brought in our the senior leadership team from DMTA, and we brought in a couple of key corporate people. We brought in the one with the checkbook, the VP of Finance, and the business development, VP of Business Development. And when we walked out of there that day, we had a plan. And we meet every quarter, and we reviewed, that plan to start with. But we also look at, the quarter that was. We spend just a little bit of time on that. The good, bad, and the ugly, lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the quarter coming up. What are the 3, 4, 5 things that we absolutely got to get done in this quarter to be successful? And then each department head talks about their challenges. What are their biggest challenges, and what are they doing to fix it? And we work it's really a troubleshooting on that, right? So we work as a team to try to help them troubleshoot it. And then we walk out of that meeting with a list of action items. And those action items are rolled up into our weekly staff meeting as rocks. And then every Monday morning, every action item is reviewed, and everybody gives a update on what have they done to get that whatever action item is or task done. And we've been able to just continually, grind through everything that we need to be successful. And so it's very systematic.
Yeah. So you got good agendas along the way. You know what the plan is. By the way, you think about what you just said. You have, if you think about the theory of goal setting, you have the theory of goal setting where you have like a longer term plan, and then you break it down into smaller and smaller chunks. It's exactly what you're doing.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I see that happen to people is that if they do take the time to set up something like a 5-year plan, then the execution of it day in and day out, it flitters away. It goes into a binder that sits on a shelf somewhere. But of every organization, you guys might be at the very top that I've seen of being able to execute on a plan. And it sounds like some of the key things that you found that work well are regular scheduled meetings. What are some of those other things? I mean, you've highlighted a few of them, but man, we need to know that, because we all need to do a better job of executing on the bigger vision.
It's literally in our quarterly meetings, when we leave with a list of action plans. And the other thing I think we do unique in that meeting is at the end, each senior leader says, okay, here's my action plans for the quarter. Here's what I'm going to do for the quarter. And then anybody else in the room, because companies are interdependent, right? So there may be a leader over here that needs this leader to do something for him so he can be successful. That leader then has opportunity to say, hey, I need this added to your list. And so when we walk out of there, we've got a very comprehensive list of items, and it's literally just every Monday. It's like we do every quarterly meeting for 10 years. We've never missed a quarterly meeting.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
10 years. I mean, I think next year in February or March, we'll have done 10 years of quarterly meetings together.
And it's regular. And you know what? Because we schedule that next quarterly meeting before we leave here.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine.
We get it on the calendar. But Monday staff meetings too.
Yeah.
Right. We have an agenda. We go through that agenda, and we very diligent on making sure those action items get on it. And then every week they're reviewed. And it's really no more complicated than that, is from what we've done. But we're serious about it, because when it goes, we use Teams. And so basically, it may not be a specific task per se. It may be a goal that's on there that the person needs to do. And then they'll make a plan. And we literally break it out and look at the plan and see where they're at on their steps to get through that, to get it done. And, just, I think the consistency of just doing that and being serious about it and holding people accountable and them holding themselves accountable has led to being able to get through it. That meeting in August of 2015, we probably executed 95% of everything that we said in there. And there were some pretty significant stretch goals in there. And we've been able to execute it just through, quite honestly, consistency and focus.
Yeah, one of the things that we did in that meeting that I would encourage anybody to go do, and that is build out what is your vision for the future. So the exercise that we did was to look and imagine having a conversation 5 years from now and talking about all the good things that have happened over the last 5 years. So you kind of put yourself in a future state. And I remember doing that. And we've done that actually 3 times now, I think maybe 3 or even 4 times of either 3 or 5 year windows of time where you imagine the future state. And then you say to yourself, okay, what has to happen in order for us to get to that point? And it's been a really good exercise. And it's shocking, to your point, to go back and look at that document and see how much you guys have been able to go accomplish over that time. And what's the biggest thing when you go look back to way, way, way back when? If you look back now, what's one of the biggest things that you're most proud of over that span of time?
Well, the 15 years prior to me taking over as CEO, we grew 1% in over 15 years. And we were a small niche medical company in a declining industry. I think sometimes in business you see an opportunity and you go for it, right? Sometimes in business, you just got to do something because what you're doing is not working.
Yeah.
And so,
or it's not going to keep working.
Yes.
Which was a big thing that you guys saw. You saw the future and said, hey, if we continue on this trajectory, we kind of know what path we're going to end up on.
Oh, you could clearly see the future. And it wasn't positive, right? It wasn't a growth future. And we had just got a new CEO that made it crystal clear he expected growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at that one and said, I'm not going to last very long if I continue down this path because we're not going to grow.
Fear is a motivator.
And so, we knew we needed to do something. And so we leveraged our brand equity, quite honestly.
Yeah.
We're still operating in a red ocean, but we leverage our brand equity. And because we've hired good people, we got good products, and we execute well, we've been able to if you look over the full 10 years period, we've got about an 11.5% CAGR over that time. But the vast majority of that growth, from 2015 to 2020, it took those years really to get all the products and everything that we needed in place based upon that August 15 meeting to develop them and get them in the pipeline. So really that growth has came since 2021. We probably, without COVID in 2020, we probably could have launched it. So it kind of delayed us a year. But over the last 3-4 years, we've been growing roughly 30% a year.
Wow. I mean, in a market that I think it's a maybe 3% growth market.
Right.
So that's incredible. One of the ways that you guys did that, which I want to talk with you about, is that at one point you guys were almost exclusively a capital equipment company.
We were.
And so if you imagine a sales force only selling capital equipment, big ticket, 6-figure pieces of equipment in the medical and medical space, you guys made a transition and a shift that I have seen very, very few companies make, and that is going from a capital equipment company to a consumables company. And it just, we could talk a bunch of stuff about that, but one of the things I'm curious about is how did you pull that off? Because, people that are good at selling capital not necessarily good at selling consumables and vice versa. So what insight do you have around that as far as maybe the mindsets of people, or did you have to get new people, or how did that go?
Yeah, we, in every organization, you have to have the right people.
Yeah.
Right. And when I took over, I actually fired about half the sales team. I think we had 11 sales reps at the time, got rid of 6 of them.
Yeah.
Within 90 days. And actually, the last 6 months of the year, we sold more with 5 sales reps than we did with 11. And then, when we made the determination where we're going, we made hiring decisions based on depending on where we're going, not where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our hiring decisions were made with that transition to consumable business in mind. And so all of the sales management we made, hires, all of that came with that background in the consumables. And really, we had to shift the company culture, to where we were going, not where we were at. And, at one point in time on the capital, we had 11 people selling. Today we have 3.
Yeah.
Selling capital, and we've got about 30 selling what I call our endourology line. But our endourology line acts as basically our main prospecting tool for our capital equipment. So they feed them leads.
So nice.
And that's how we've been able to shift that.
And it's a smart thing that you're talking about, because the fact is if you're going to have to go into another direction and you're going to transition the business over, you can't keep looking at the same criteria, the hiring criteria for salespeople of what you have, because you're going somewhere else. And so you need a different skill set. And at least it's been my experience, Brock, and I'm curious as to your thoughts. There are people who are naturally better at selling capital equipment than consumables, and vice versa. The sales cycles are so different. The amount of, you find people that are really patient, and that's what it takes to some degree to sell capital equipment. And then you get people that just are impatient, which is a good skill set too. But any other differences you've seen between people that are good at capital versus consumable?
Well, on the capital side, we call it farmers, right? And on the consumable side, they need to be hunters, because the sales cycles, a sales cycle on our capital equipment can be 24, 36, 48 months.
Yeah.
So those guys have always got to be prospecting, cultivating the relationships, that deals that are in the pipeline, but they've always got to be adding that pipeline at all times to be successful, and always be closing when they can. On the other, it's much shorter sales cycles, 30, 60, 90 days. And if you meet them, you probably may not be able to tell the difference in personalities per se, but their mentality is absolutely different.
And what do you see different about their mentality?
They're more aggressive.
Okay.
As far
the
as
consumable people.
Yes. And probably a little more pushy per se. But they're not afraid to ask for the order. Where on the capital equipment, they're developing relationships and maintaining those relationships. And it's still important on the consumable side, right? To develop those, whatnot. But if you're going to be in the hunter role, you cannot be afraid to ask for the business.
Yeah. On the consumable, on the capital role, asking for the business is maybe securing a next meeting, getting access to somebody else in an organization. That's your win on that side of things. It's not a sale like it is on consumables.
It's a whole different set of questions.
Yeah.
You got to ask.
Yeah, without a doubt. And is it easy for somebody to make a transition from one to the other? Or do you think, what's your take on that? Can somebody go from one to the other?
Some can, a lot can't. Because we have had some make that transition, but we've had a lot that we're not able to make that transition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like there's a personality style, and not to say that someone can't change or someone can't get better, but your starting point, it's better or more helpful to have somebody at a starting point where they're already kind of geared towards that mentality, whether it's capital or consumable. They're already kind of mentally there.
Yes.
rather than trying to make them into something that's not natural to their style.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense. So I love the fact that you're thinking about, like, you have a plan, you know where you want to be, you see the direction of where you want to take the business over the next 3 to 5 years. You have that written out. Okay. That's described out in intricate detail. Then you break that into quarterly meetings. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so in the quarterly meetings you guys are going through, and we've been helping you with that for, again, almost 10 years now. It's incredible. But we go through a tight agenda inside of there. And then on a weekly basis, you have internal meetings. So you're cascading this accountability throughout the organization down to a weekly basis inside of there. And so that's how you're able to keep everything flowing, as opposed to having a 5-year plan end up on a shelf.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and even in our quarterly meetings, we'll carve out time to look at the 5-year plan and figure out, okay, this quarter, what are we going to do to advance towards that 5-year plan? And obviously then that flows down through the whole system we have as well.
Yeah. If you think, I always think of it this way too, is that if you have let's say you have a 3-year plan, a 3-year plan is really 12 quarters. And so what can I do in this quarter that will help progress the 3-year plan? Because trying to hit a target that's 3 years from now can be insurmountable in terms of how much wood that you have to chop.
Right.
But you can chop 90 days worth of wood and you can get closer to the overall goal. And that's the key thing. I got a friend of mine that says it's not easy, but it is simple. And the idea behind it is fundamentally is that certain things are not necessarily difficult to do. They just take some work to go make it happen. It's the consistency over time that makes it really a reality. That's the hardest part of it.
Well, it's really your daily behaviors,
mm-hmm.
right? How do you eat a whale? A bite at a time, right? But if you look at the whole whale, you think that's a lot.
It's a lot of whale.
But if you're taking 2-3 bites a day, every day, you can get there, right? And it's really no different here. There's, if people are struggling with time management and priority, there's a 12-week year book that I use.
Brian Morgan.
Yep.
We'll put that in the show notes.
That really helps keep you on track and keeps the planning and priority. Sometimes we get so tied up in what we're doing day to day and the noise of the business and what's going on in the business, you lose sight of really working on what's important and what's going to move the needle of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And using 12-week year has helped me keep focused and priority and working on the right things, because I don't leave the office until those things are done.
Yeah.
For that day. I don't kick that can down the road. I literally won't leave till that's done.
Yeah. And as we think this through, what you're describing, again, I'm picturing in my mind this cascade, right? From 5-year to quarterly to weekly. Are there things that you do with your calendar? I love to find out what productivity tips that you have, like on a day-to-day basis, to manage what you've got going on, because you've got the tactical stuff that's happening day in and day out, and you've also got strategic stuff. Any good insight that you have, for me or for us around that side of it, the tactical day-to-day time management stuff?
Well, you know what? I take 30 minutes at the beginning each morning in quiet time and really think through what is the most important things I need to get done today. And I'll make a list of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I make sure those get done that day, right? But you also need, and we talked about this actually on Wednesday in our meeting, is you need to carve out time to think about just strategically what's important in the company and where are we going to take this company. And, you literally got to just carve out an hour and a half, preferably a week, to really just have some quiet time to really think through where, what's going on in the company, and where you need to take the company and any adjustments that need to be made within the organization.
So having some time block each week to be more strategic in your thinking. It's on the calendar. Your daily prioritization, 30 minutes every day prior to the day. The other thing I heard you say in there that I think is I needed to hear it, and that is that you're not leaving the day until those core things get done.
Right.
You're not. You said not kicking the can down the road, which is easy for folks to do, but in your case, you always seem to have the discipline of execution. Pretty much better than anybody I've ever met, which I've always admired that about you. So you do a great job there. Indeed. Hey, let me switch gears with you a little bit, and I'm thinking about VPs of sales and sales managers, and you have several on your team right now. I think you've been in that role as well. What are some of the things that you think that if you were counseling or guiding somebody on the sales management front, what are some of the key things that you think make really good sales managers or VPs of sales, sort of that level?
Well, they've got to be good coaches. They got to be good mentors. They got to be good motivators. They've got to understand all what's going on at the ground level. Right. So they need to spend time in the field, get out of the office.
Yeah.
Talk to the people, what's going on. And be good communicators. They got to be good leaders. I've seen a lot of bad sales leaders. In my career, and the good ones connect with their organization. They understand what's going on at all levels of their organization, and they're able to communicate properly on what adjustments need to be made within it. But I think my criteria really is they've got to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. They need to be talking to the sales reps, and they need to be going down, 2-3 levels below them to be able to know what the pulse is in the organization and understand what's going on.
It always seems to me like it's just the toughest job to me. I mean, I know your job is tough, without a doubt. Being a VP of sales is also a tough job, because it seems like you got to be, to your point, you've got to know the organization extremely well. You've got to know what's going on. Technically, you've got to be pretty darn good from that side of things. You guys are in the healthcare technology space. There's so many terms. It makes my head spin when we get together of all the technology and all the stuff from the healthcare side of things. The other thing that I think these folks deal with these days that makes the job even as difficult is that you have to know the software, and you have to know the enablement and the metrics and the numbers and CRM and all of that stuff. And that's a whole nother world inside of there as well. And may not have to be a specialist on all those things, but at least know enough to be able to get the reports that you need to make decisions about people and hiring and all the above. I mean, it's a tough gig.
Well, part of the reason you got to know the business, because there's a lot of data out there.
Yeah.
And you can get buried in data. But what's important information that you need to run your business? And you really need to understand your business to know what information is important. And it's really not that much information.
Yeah.
We have in our organization a sales analyst that does Salesforce and gets them all that data, right? They don't have to get it themselves. That's fed to them, but they still got to understand the data. They got to understand which data is important for what they need to get done and how to use it to manage people. And, but that goes back to knowing the business and, knowing the people.
It reminds me of a story that I've heard of somebody asking a pilot of a commercial airline. They look at the pilot behind the cockpit and they see all these dials, and they're like, how do you possibly know how to fly this plane with 4,000 if you've ever looked into a cockpit of a modern modern plane? And the answer is there's really 5 dials I need to pay attention to, and if I keep an eye on those 5, everything else is going to be fine eventually. And it feels like that's a little bit of what you're saying there is if you can limit to the most key metrics for your business, when you know the business and you know what those key metrics are. And by the way, you trust the data, because sometimes there's you doubt data,
right,
as well. Excellent. And I'm sure hiring is another piece to it as well. Anything you guys have found as far as magic dust to hire? You guys got a great team. Anything that you found that helps you on the hiring front?
Well, we actually put a lot of effort into hiring. And that's probably one of the major changes we've made over the years is the amount of effort we do put into hiring and the standard that we hire to. But, we use behavioral assessment tests. It is one of the key things we do because we want to make sure that they're wired to do what we're asking them to do.
That you're not fighting nature.
Right. Right.
It's a big deal.
And there's a lot of sales reps out there that are not that, right? Somehow, some way they got into sales, but they're really not wired for sales. That's not their personality. We want the personality types that are wired to sales. We can train on product. And most companies train on product, right? We want the people that are, natural born salespeople. And one of the things I think that we've really focused on, and with Sandler and Mark here, is we have committed to a culture of continuous improvement on the sales front. I personally interview every sales rep I'm the last step of the interview process before we hire them. And before they leave my office, they agree that they're going to commit to the Dornier selling system, which is the Sandler. Not only go through the foundations, but they're going to spend 3 hours a month. They're going to commit to spend 3 hours a month to working to become a better salesperson. That's really on their craft. So if you come to work for Dornier, that's not an option. That's a requirement. And so I want to make sure they understand that. And I personally cover it with them. And we're successful because we got great people. We're successful because of our people. We got great products, but we got great salespeople that work very hard. And we got better salespeople than they got. And we do it because we're constantly working on our craft. And there's a lot of salespeople out there that do not constantly work on their craft, trying to become better at what they do. And I think that's been a key reason why we've been successful as well.
Yeah, it's always funny to me that the people that are the best at selling, they want to get better. They're the people that want to learn more. They want to grow more. They want to adopt more selling principles and selling strategies. They're looking for that stuff. The people that aren't there generally, they're complacent, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so, you guys are taking about 3 hours a month for personal development, getting better at your craft. That is awesome. Thank you for that, by the way.
Well, it's been a key part of what we've done.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it's as much as a culture and a mindset as it is anything to me. I mean, you guys instill that and bring that in. I love the fact too that when you interview people, you're laying that out as an expectation, whether it's Sandler or any other methodology, but you're laying out the expectations of what you need from somebody to perform before they get hired. And they're having to say yes to that in the interview process prior to getting an offer. I think that's a super smart thing to do. Sandler rule, you can't get mad at somebody for doing something you didn't tell them they couldn't do.
Right.
And in that case, you're using that rule right there to make sure that you've got good expectations laid out for those people as they come on board. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Thank you.
I was thinking too about, your career track. When you started at Dornier, I mean, what level? Where did you start?
I was actually an installer.
You were an installer, and you're now the president of Dornier Americas. running that. Not to mention you have some international responsibility as well.
Right.
To me, Brock, your career track, it's unusual in the sense that not many people go and take that full journey. And they survive a lot of bosses, and they, that they're able to kind of change and transform themselves. Any guidance you would give to anybody on somebody that wanted to make that journey? They wanted to climb that ladder, so to speak. What counsel would you have for somebody around being able to make that trek? Because a lot of people, I think, would like to make the trek that you've made.
Well, I've always just focused on when I started out, I was not going, I want to become CEO of Dornier. Quite honestly, I wasn't even saying I wanted to become a service manager, right? In every job I've had, I've literally just focused on trying to be the best I could be in that job and working to continually improve my skill set to be the best at what I do in that job. And because I was successful in being really good at what I did, I got the next opportunity.
Mm.
But what got you here won't get you there. So when I got that next opportunity, I had to figure out what's it take to be the best in that job. And it's generally a different skill set.
Yeah.
And so it's really been a continual learning and development my entire life, being a lifelong learner, and be willing to change and actively seek out to change yourself and reinvent yourself. And that's really been the key is I've never in my career aspired to go to the next level per se. I just aspired.
It was a byproduct?
It was a byproduct of doing the best job I could. And, I've always worked hard to protect my name.
Mm-hmm.
I take that seriously. I've always tried to be a good employee. I've always tried to be a good colleague. I've not stepped over people. I've not walked over people to get where I'm at. Just because I didn't aspire really to continue to grow. Yeah, I wanted to grow, but it wasn't necessarily keep climbing the corporate ladder.
It's interesting that you would say that, because I think a lot of people would say in their own careers that they want this next promotion. They want the next run on the ladder. They want to grow in that sense. And yet you didn't really have that. You haven't had that, and yet you've achieved it.
Right.
I mean, that's insightful. I mean, but almost, Brock, if you think about it, you were focusing on the process of being the best person you could be, and the outcome that was the byproduct was you got promotions and you worked your way through the organization. And that's a great spot to be in, but it's not something I think somebody would intuitively look to go do.
And you know what? Maybe they're smarter people than I am that go, I want to go do this, right? Throughout my career, I always enjoyed what I did.
Yeah.
I love being a service engineer, and then I loved service management. And then I loved working with the distributors and selling stuff in Latin America. I just have always enjoyed the job that I've done, and I've just fully thrown myself into it and embraced it. And literally I want to be the best I can be in that job.
Yeah.
And you've got to continue to, like I said, adapt and change, right? So you always are going, taking courses, seminars, whatever it takes, right? I mean, from where I started, I went and got a bachelor's degree. I've got a master's degree, but, I've always just continued to seek.
So it's lifetime learning.
Yeah. And enjoy the journey, I think it's been a key part of it. And part of the reason I've been able to keep my sanity and be able to stay in the same organization, because this organization's been through some ups and downs through my career. I'll promise you.
Sure. And I think too, Brock, when you take a new role, when anybody takes a new role, there's always a level of uncertainty. I remember, when you got your first role, I mean, maybe you want to share the story, but I remember meeting with you. I don't know, we're probably thinking of the same thing.
We are. We are probably the exact same day.
Yeah. When you got announced that you were asked to take over the role and running the company.
Yeah. So I was shocked. And it was because of how the company was ran at the time, quite honestly. I was VP, but I didn't have visibility to all the company financials. I could sense it, and I knew we had issues, but I didn't know how big the issues were.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was asked to take the leadership reins and saw what was going on, it was like, oh, wow. And so one of the first things I did was call Mark and said, hey, we need to meet. And I came the next day. He looked at me and took me by the arm and said, hey, have a seat, take 10 deep breaths.
I remember.
And I'll come back and see you. There was a little anxiety there because we had major issues.
Yeah.
Right. And, I felt like I was drowning at that point, right? I was underwater.
Yeah.
Even though I'd been with the company a long time and I knew the company very well, the magnitude of this thing overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
And so we sat down that day and we went through the issues and we developed a plan. And then we just started, taking that plan and putting it into bite-sized pieces and knocking it out. And, that was part of the time when shortly thereafter we let all the sales reps go because we had a culture at that time in our sales department is we had people that could tell you every reason in the world why they can't sell. I'd never been in that role, but I figured out pretty quickly, I need to find 11 people that can figure out how to sell, not tell me why it can't be sold.
Yeah.
And that's when we put in to place what we have today, our training program with Mark is, we weren't, our sales team at the time, they were doing what I call a features and benefits puke, right? So they meet with the customer and they would just puke all over in the features and benefits. But they weren't asking questions, or not many questions. And the questions they were asking, they weren't asking the right questions because we actually had a product that we're selling to Latin America. Then when we brought a new VP on board, Jeff Howe, who was Sandler trained and believed in Sandler, started asking questions. And you know what? We had this product for 5-6 years that was looked as a Latin American product that fit the U.S. market very well. And that really helped our sales take off. But it was because they weren't asking questions. They were having a product that they thought met their needs the best, and they were just telling them why all the features and benefits, why it's so great.
It's not uncommon.
And so having seen that, and through my journey too, I came up through the technical side. Yeah. And how Mark and I actually started was intuitively, I just knew, because I was doing the same thing when I started, doing the features of benefit puke. And I just intuitively knew I needed to be asking questions, but I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know how to ask them.
Yeah.
And that's really what got me started. Because I started with Mark before the rest of the organization.
Yeah, you started as an individual client, sort of paying your own way, as I recall, with what we were doing together.
Yep. And so I knew the value of that.
Yeah.
And then I could see what our sales team was doing.
Yeah.
And we had a cultural problem. And we had a sales problem. And through getting the right people, getting the right training with the right mentality, has really been another one of our keys to getting that thing turned around.
Yeah. You've done such a great job. There's no doubt about it. And the time that we've known each other, of being able to take strategies and turn them into execution and implementations. And that's certainly one component to it. The other component to it is just culture. It's a mindset and an attitude and a culture of, and I think this is a common ingredient that I see in all people that just do a great job, and that is they are lifetime learners. And that might be self-serving in our business, whatever, but it's just the reality is that I was asked the other day, I was speaking at a CEO group, and they did an opening question, and they said, "What do your best friends all have in common?" And I thought, what a great question. What a great question. And it took me a minute, but I'm like, all of my best friends are lifetime learners.
Mm-hmm.
They just are. And so that's a key ingredient, I think, to the mindset of Brock Faulkner of you're a lifetime learner. You've instilled that within the organization. You put systems in place and you've been consistent about doing it and getting it done through all these years. And that's to me, it's such a tribute to you because not everybody can do that. I mean, you don't see as many organizations that put the consistency together. Part of it, which is great, is that you've been there, you've been consistent, so you've had enough leeway to be able to go do it, which is great as well. Of course, you do that because you perform. So that's awesome. What a great story. There's lots of lessons inside of there. Any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to throw out, share, whatever you like?
I think the last piece I'll share is really kind of how we evaluate sales performance, right? Numbers are important, but the numbers are a result of your behavior, attitude, and technique. And so in actually behavior, attitude, technique is going to be applied throughout all of the sales management area. If you've got a problem with the numbers, it's probably going to be a behavior, attitude, or technique problem. And that's how we troubleshoot it, right? We look at the behavior generally. Are they doing the right things every day to put themselves in the position to win? If they're not, then they need to be coached on what to do and how to get there. And if they're still not willing to do it, then that's a different problem. And they're probably not a good fit for the organization.
Yeah.
The attitude's at 6 inches between their ears.
Yeah.
Right. Sales is tough, and it's a grind. And to keep the last thing most sales reps need when they're having a tough quarter is for their sales manager to be all over their back, right? They probably need somebody picking them up and trying to make them feel better and motivating them versus beating them down. So we try to keep a positive mindset. And
that is so true, by the way. That's so important.
We don't take out the stick very often at all. There are certain individuals that need the stick, right? And sometimes the stick works, but most of the time it doesn't, because most of these people, if you're hiring the right people, they're money motivated. If they're not selling, they're not making money, and they're beating themselves up hard.
Yeah. Right.
And they're feeling the pressure. And then techniques is the selling technique, right? Sales training. Are they doing what they're trained to do? Mm-hmm. Or are they wimping out?
Yeah.
Right. And we'll look at that, because we've had sales reps that can all day long spout the Sandler sales language and verbiage and techniques, but they don't apply it when they get in front of the customer, because they wimp out, because they're not comfortable. And guess what happens? They get the same results they've always got when they do that. And we've had to let some people go that were long-term employees, especially early on.
Yeah.
Were long-term employees, very well trained in Sandler, but they were not applying it.
Yeah.
And so, the last piece is really, don't just manage through numbers, right? Troubleshoot a little bit deeper and figure out what's going on. Why are they not making their numbers? And then, try to affect the input because you're not going to affect the output.
Yeah.
The output is what it is.
Yeah. Focus on the process, not on the outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that. I think there is a lot to be said that the right people are going to be motivated to do the right thing. And they need help a lot of times to be picked up when they're down, because to your point, a sales manager looks at a salesperson and says, you need to sell more. Well, that's just not helpful.
Right.
That's just not really helpful. It's like, how do I, if they could, they would.
Mm-hmm.
So they need the help from the manager to unlock it. And that's just a key ingredient. Behavior attitude technique is a great formula to be able to look at what are they missing that they need in order to be more successful. It's awesome stuff. Brock, thanks for taking the drive over. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for all you do for us.
Oh my gosh.
Appreciate it.
It's such a joy. It's such a joy. I love watching people grow. I love watching organizations grow, and watching yours grow. And over the last 10, 12 years, it's just been remarkable. You've done a great job.
It's been a great ride.
It is a great ride.
Yep, for sure.
Indeed. Thanks again, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. So, hey, I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this episode. By far, it's our purpose to help people make money and have fun and have a good time. We're here to help improve your life, to help you make it easier to go sell or to manage your sales team, and ultimately to go build your own sales engine. Don't miss an episode. Best way to go do that is to make sure that you jump out to buildingyoursalesengine.com/follow, where you can link up to all of our latest episodes. For more information about this episode, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can download show notes, transcripts, and other information, including handouts, snapshots of this and other episodes. If you'd like to connect with us to talk about how we can help you build your sales engine, and you are either located in the state of Georgia or are referred to us by one of our clients or affiliated by one of our clients, please reach out to us at buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can click there to book some time with us. We can find out how we can be of help with one another. If you're not in either of those two circumstances, please reach out to sandler.com, where you can find a Sandler office near you. Be well.